The cruel billionaire, publicly rejected by a simple woman in front of everyone. They called him Ruthless Donovan Roth, the billionaire heir who ruled boardrooms and crushed any who stood in his way. No one dared defy him until she did. Clara Ellis was an ordinary woman with an extraordinary backbone. She never expected to capture Donovan's attention, much less be pulled into his glamorous yet cutthroat world of relentless ambition and hidden betrayals. But when their fates intertwine, Clara is forced to confront his domineering nature, and he's forced to face a truth he's never encountered someone who can't be bought. Witness how a single moment of truth leads to a shocking public rejection, shattering Donovan's pride in front of everyone. Donovan Roth's morning began in the penthouse suite of the illustrious Roth Towers in Manhattan. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, the city stretched out below him, a sea of skyscrapers and bustling streets. He sipped an espresso brewed from a top-of-the-line machine shipped from Italy, scanning the latest headlines on his tablet. His name, Donovan Roth, splashed across gossip columns and business sections alike. One article detailed his fiery takeover of a manufacturing company, casting him as a ruthless shark. Another featured a photograph of him dining with well-known real estate mogul Robert Thurman, once rumored to be in talks with Bill Gates for a philanthropic venture. Donovan smirked at the irony. Everyone wanted to rub elbows with him, but none truly knew him. Meanwhile, across town, in a humble Queens apartment, Clara Ellis hit the snooze button on her alarm clock for the second time. She had spent the night completing her final essay for her nursing program, determined to finally earn her RN license. A quick glance at the digital readout made her yelp. She was late for her job at the local family diner. Throwing on a plain grey sweater and a pair of well-worn jeans, she dashed out the door, purse in hand. Her thoughts filled with to-do lists and daydreams of the day she could finally leave the diner for a hospital. At the sleek conference room table in Roth Enterprises, Donovan wrapped up a tense meeting with his executive team, including James Fletcher, one of the few men Donovan trusted implicitly since their early days at Harvard Business School. Their conversation revolved around a multi-billion-dollar real estate project about to break ground near the East River. Though Donovan commanded the room with his trademark glare and curt words, his mind wandered briefly to the upcoming philanthropic gala he was required to attend that evening. It was an event funded by the Carter Foundation, spearheaded by James Anderson, CFO of Tesla, and known for his philanthropic influence. Events like these were often about optics, and Donovan was determined to keep his reputation polished in the eyes of potential investors. At the family diner, Clara juggled a flurry of orders from her regulars. She served coffee with a smile, remembering every detail from each customer's life, birthdays, anniversaries, or even the progress of the local kids' soccer matches. Her caring nature put people at ease. In between refills, her best friend, Ivy Martinez, teased her about working too hard and being too nice. "You have to loosen up," Ivy insisted. "Let people take care of you for a change." Little did Clara know that her life would soon intersect with the city's most powerful man. As the day wore on, fate was about to spin its wheel, bringing Donovan Roth's ruthless world crashing into the path of Clara's tender heart. Two completely different realities. The billionaire who owned half of Manhattan and the nurse-to-be who worked double shifts at a diner were about to collide in a way that no one could have predicted. Donovan's chauffeur-driven black Bentley pulled to a smooth stop outside the Grand Ballroom in the heart of Midtown Manhattan. Cameras flashed, capturing his arrival at the Carter Foundation Gala, a star-studded charity event to raise funds for underprivileged medical programs across the country. The paparazzi swarmed, shouting his name, desperate to glean any reaction or statement from the elusive billionaire. With a dismissive wave, Donovan made his way inside. Passing gold-lined columns and floral arrangements meant to impress even the most jaded elites. Inside the scene teemed with notable faces. James Anderson, mentioned earlier, traded pleasantries with top executives, while local politicians mingled with socialites. Designer gowns sparkled under the chandeliers. Donovan found these gatherings more chore than joy, but as the driving force behind Roth Enterprises, he had to keep up appearances. On his arm was his latest flavor of the month, Victoria Hale, an elegant model with impeccable style and a track record of short-lived relationships with high-profile men. Donovan considered her more of a status accessory than anything else, and Victoria, for her part, seemed content to be photographed on his arm. The gala's program included a silent auction showcasing everything from expensive jewelry to luxury vacations. Deep in conversation with a real estate partner, Donovan didn't notice the hush that fell over the room when a new performer took the stage. A husky, soulful voice filled the air. Someone singing an acoustic rendition of a classic tune. The singer was none other than Clara Ellis, who had been invited to volunteer and also perform a charity number for the event's entertainment. Through her nursing program, she'd connected with the Carter Foundation, which helped fund scholarships. They had discovered her gift for music during a small fundraiser a few weeks prior, and the organizers insisted she lend her voice to the gala. Clara had arrived at the event, feeling out of place in a borrowed dress, a flowing midnight blue gown that she kept tugging at self-consciously. As she sang under the bright lights, however, her worries melted away, replaced by the pure emotion of the music. The crowd was captivated by her sincerity and raw talent, far more entrancing than the typical polished performances of the city's usual lounge singers. After the applause died down, Clara stepped off the stage, cheeks glowing. She tried to blend into the background, feeling her borrowed shoes pinch, but fate had other ideas. She nearly bumped into Victoria Hale, who was more focused on adjusting her glittery clutch than watching where she was going. The collision caused Victoria's glass of champagne to slosh onto her designer gown. "You clumsy fool," Victoria snapped, stepping back in horror at the stained fabric. "Do you have any idea what this dress cost?" Clara apologized profusely, rummaging in her small handbag for a napkin. She had barely mustered a response when she felt someone's intense gaze upon her. Looking up, she met the piercing eyes of Donovan Roth himself. The tension was palpable. He took a step closer, scanning Clara's face, then the stage from which she'd just performed. Something about her presence seemed to intrigue him. But the moment was shattered by Victoria's haughty demands that Clara make amends. Clara, face burning, began to stammer an apology. But Donovan raised a hand, silencing both women. "Who are you?" he asked Clara, ignoring Victoria's outburst entirely. "Clara Ellis," she said softly, her voice still trembling. She knew his name, everyone did. But she never expected to stand face to face with Manhattan's most feared and admired billionaire, especially not under such embarrassing circumstances. Donovan's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "Clara Ellis. Interesting." He murmured the words, meaning more to him in that instant than even he could understand. Meanwhile, Victoria gaped, stunned at being dismissed so easily by a man who was supposed to be her date. And in that crowded ballroom, under the glare of crystal chandeliers, the first spark between Donovan and Clara ignited unbeknownst to them both, about to set fire to everything they knew. Clara's heart pounded as she navigated the rest of the gala, trying and failing to remain inconspicuous. She found refuge at a table near the corner, busily helping foundation staff organize pledge cards. Though she managed to avoid another run-in with Donovan or Victoria, she felt the weight of Donovan's brief scrutiny lingering in her thoughts. Eventually, the event concluded. With the final songs sung, the auction items claimed, and the prominent attendees heading off to after-parties, Clara said her goodbyes to the foundation members. Collecting her coat, she decided to slip out discreetly, mindful of tomorrow's early shift at the diner. As she exited the gilded double doors, she nearly collided with Donovan Roth once more. He stood alone in the grand foyer, checking messages on his phone, while Victoria had wandered off to gush over a new design bag with other socialites. The billionaire lifted his gaze when he heard Clara's footsteps, and for an instant, the two were locked in a silent moment of recognition. Miss Ellis Donovan began tucking his phone away. A valet rushed forward to hand him his coat, but he gestured the man aside. "You sing beautifully." Clara felt her cheeks grow warm. She mustered a polite smile. "That's kind of you to say, Mr. Roth. I'm just glad the audience enjoyed it." Donovan didn't seem like the type to dole out compliments freely, especially not over a volunteer performance at a charity gala. He observed her, carefully noticing the faint exhaustion etched under her eyes. "You're still a student," he guessed. She nodded. "Nursing, actually. The Carter Foundation helps with scholarships." A small frown tugged at the corners of Donovan's mouth. "So music is just a side passion?" Clara shrugged, hesitant to share too much. "Singing is something I love, but nursing is where I feel I can truly make a difference." Before Donovan could inquire further, Victoria appeared at his side, hooking her arm through his with a possessive flair. "Donnie, are you ready?" she purred, batting her lashes. "We're meeting James Fletcher and the others for drinks." Donovan nodded curtly, his cool persona slipping back into place. However, before he turned to leave, he looked at Clara again. Something in his eyes hinted at an unusual curiosity. "Good night, Miss Ellis," he said, voice low. Without another word, he left the foyer, Victoria clinging to him like a living accessory. Clara released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She felt somewhat dazed. Donovan Roth's reputation was that of a man who rarely offered compliments, much less personal interest in a stranger. So why had he taken notice of her? Shaking off the thought, she pulled her coat around her shoulders and walked out into the brisk night air. Outside, a few paparazzi still loitered, snapping photos of late-departing celebrities and high-profile guests. Clara was relieved she wasn't important enough for them to care about. She hurried to the nearest subway station, her mind spinning with the bizarre chain of events. She didn't know it, but that chance meeting would soon become the catalyst for a series of life-altering events, forging an unbreakable link between the simple woman and the powerful billionaire. Far from the spotlight, Clara rode the rattling train back to Queens, pondering Donovan's brief kindness. Despite everything she'd heard about his ruthless tactics, a small part of her wondered if there was something deeper behind that mask. If there was, she suspected it would take more than a fleeting exchange to uncover. And in the days to come, that mystery would draw her closer to Donovan's world than she ever imagined. The next morning, Clara slid into her routine, a half shift at the diner, followed by classes at the nursing school. She arrived a bit earlier than usual, hoping to catch her boss, Mr. Beaumont, for a quick chat. He was seated at the corner booth, sipping black coffee and reading the paper. When Clara approached, he lowered the newspaper and smiled. "How was that fancy event, Clara?" he teased. Mr. Beaumont had a soft spot for Clara, often calling her the diner's guardian angel. "Did you dazzle the big shots?" Clara let out a shy laugh. "I don't know about dazzling, but I think they liked the performance." She weighed whether to mention Donovan Roth's odd compliment. In the end, She decided against it. Telling Mr. Beaumont that Manhattan's most famous billionaire had praised her singing felt too surreal. Soon the morning rush began, and Clara was thrust into a whirl of coffee refills and breakfast orders. Between serving scrambled eggs and pancakes, she caught sight of her best friend Ivy, breezing through the door in her usual energetic manner. Ivy slid onto a stool at the counter, resting her chin on her hands. "How was the gala?" "Did you meet anyone famous?" Ivy asked, eyes bright with curiosity. Clara could only muster a sheepish smile. "I may have bumped into Donovan Roth." Ivy's jaw dropped. The Donovan Roth. The billionaire, the business mogul who's like on the cover of every finance magazine out there. Clara bit her lip, nodding. Before she could elaborate, the bell above the diner door jingled, and a woman dressed in an expensive coat stepped inside. She appeared out of place in the cozy, down-to-earth establishment. Without looking at the menu, she locked eyes with Clara and beckoned her over. "Clara Ellis," the woman said, voice crisp and direct. "Yes?" Clara replied cautiously, setting down her tray. "I'm Margot Lee. I work for Mr. Donovan Roth." She flashed a business card that bore the Roth Enterprises logo in embossed gold. "He would like you to call him regarding a potential opportunity." Clara blinked momentarily, speechless. Ivy all but squealed in excitement from the counter. Margot's demeanor remained cool and professional. "You can reach him at the number on the card." She continued, handing Clara a sleek envelope. "Inside you'll find preliminary information. Good day." And with that, Margot turned on her heel and exited the diner. Swallowing hard, Clara opened the envelope. There was a typed letter explaining that Donovan Roth was seeking a private nurse for a short-term philanthropic initiative, apparently an upcoming medical outreach in partnership with the Carter Foundation, and it hinted at a generous payment and a unique chance to gain hands-on experience. At the bottom, Donovan's signature stood out in bold ink. Ivy craned her neck to see the document, gasping. "Oh my gosh, Clara. This is huge. You have to call him." But a swirl of doubt took hold in Clara's mind. Why would a ruthless businessman like Donovan Roth personally reach out to her for a nursing-related project? It felt suspicious. As far as she knew, he had no interest in small philanthropic endeavors, beyond writing big checks to keep up his social standing. What could he possibly want from someone like her? She tucked the envelope into her pocket, unsure if she should dismiss the offer or explore it. The rest of the shift passed in a blur, her thoughts consumed by the unexpected proposal. Clara told herself to stay calm. Perhaps it was just a legitimate opportunity, especially if the Carter Foundation was involved. However, as the day wore on, a subtle sense of foreboding settled in the pit of her stomach. Donovan Roth was not a man known for random acts of kindness. Whispers about him always ended in the same cautionary note. He always gets what he wants. If she took his offer, would she merely be another pawn in his grand game? Yet her curiosity and sense of responsibility to her struggling finances and her future career pulled her forward, urging her to at least hear him out. The next morning she found herself with her phone in hand, dialed in to the number on the business card, heart pounding as she waited for an answer that could potentially change everything. Clara could hardly believe it when an assistant confirmed a meeting time in Donovan's personal office. 2 days after receiving the envelope, she took a cab to Roth Enterprises headquarters, a sky-piercing building on Manhattan's East Side. Nervous energy thrummed through her as the elevator ascended floor after floor, climbing into the highest echelons of power. At the top, the polished glass doors slid open to reveal a panoramic view of the city, a testament to the empire Donovan Roth had built. The reception area exuded a hushed elegance, marble floors, plush seating, and a discreet staff who moved like well-choreographed dancers. Clara approached the main desk, her voice trembling when she gave her name. She was promptly escorted to a lavish sitting room adjacent to Donovan's private office. A woman with a Bluetooth headset, one of the many assistants, offered her water. Moments later, the assistant returned and motioned for Clara to enter. Donovan's office was imposing, all sleek furniture and modern art. Massive windows framed the Manhattan skyline. Behind a wide desk, Donovan sat impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit. The intensity in his gaze was as potent as Clara remembered. A quick glance around revealed tasteful decor, but surprisingly, there were personal touches. A framed photo of Donovan shaking hands with Warren Buffett, and another with a smiling group at a beachside retreat, though Donovan's expression remained stoic in both. He rose to greet her, gesturing for Clara to sit in one of the leather chairs opposite his desk. "Thank you for coming, Miss Ellis." Clara tried to steady her voice. "I'm still not entirely sure why I'm here, Mr. Roth. Your letter mentioned a philanthropic medical outreach, something with the Carter Foundation. How exactly can I help?" Donovan leaned forward, folding his hands atop his desk. "I'll be straightforward. My company is investing in a mobile healthcare initiative in partnership with the Carter Foundation, focusing on rural clinics. I need a dedicated nurse for a trial period, someone who understands the mission's importance and has both medical knowledge and a sense of compassion." Clara was skeptical. She searched Donovan's face for any hint of ulterior motive. "I'm still in nursing school. Wouldn't it be more prudent to hire someone fully qualified?" A ghost of a smile tugged at Donovan's lips. "You're close to completing your program?" "Yes. The Carter Foundation speaks highly of your skills and determination. They also mentioned your singing talents, though that's not exactly relevant to the healthcare aspect." She flushed slightly. "I see." He cleared his throat. "The role comes with a generous stipend, enough to cover tuition costs, and then some. You'll gain real-world experience, supervised by certified medical professionals. It's a unique opportunity, Miss Ellis." For a moment, the gravity of the offer hung in the air. Clara's finances were tight, and this could make her final semester far less stressful. Yet doubt nagged at her. "Why me specifically?" Donovan studied her quietly, his tone measured. "You made an impression. Your kindness is palpable. The patients we plan to serve in these rural communities need someone who can empathize, not just follow a checklist." His words, though carefully chosen, felt genuine, at least for that moment. Taking a breath, Clara forced herself to meet his gaze. "I'm not oblivious, Mr. Roth. You have a reputation for, let's just say, pragmatic solutions." Donovan gave a low chuckle. "Yes, that's one way of putting it. But my reasons are honest here. The Carter Foundation strongly recommended you and I value their input." Finally, Clara relented, deciding it was worth exploring. "If I agree, I'll need to work out scheduling with my classes, but I'm open to it, on a trial basis." He nodded, a trace of satisfaction crossing his face. "Of course, my team will handle all logistics. We'll start with a 1-month pilot program upstate. If it's successful, we can talk long-term involvement." They exchanged a few more details. Dates, times, what Clara needed to bring. As she stood to leave, Donovan walked her to the door, a gesture both respectful and uncharacteristic. His eyes flickered over her face, pausing on the uncertainty that lingered in her expression. "Don't worry, Miss Ellis," he said softly. I rarely mix business with personal matters. This is strictly about the project." "Strictly business," she repeated in her mind as she stepped into the hallway. So why did her heart flutter under his scrutiny? Clara reminded herself she was there for the opportunity to help others and further her nursing skills, not to tangle her life with the city's most formidable billionaire. Yet a strange unease gnawed at her, whispering that Donovan Roth could upend her world in ways she couldn't yet foresee. Over the next week, Clara prepared for the upcoming medical outreach. The pilot program would take them to a small town in upstate New York, where an underfunded clinic lacked basic supplies and faced a staff shortage. Despite her initial skepticism, Clara found herself growing excited about the chance to do real, tangible good. During this time, she received a steady stream of emails from Margot Lee Donovan's assistant, detailing housing arrangements, schedules, and payment terms. True to Donovan's word, the compensation was indeed generous enough to help Clara pay off a significant portion of her student loans. Her nursing instructors were impressed by the opportunity, and with a bit of juggling, Clara arranged to complete her coursework remotely during the month. It all felt like a whirlwind. "Just promise me you'll be careful," Ivy insisted one evening as they shared takeout in Clara's cramped apartment. "Donovan Roth doesn't exactly have a heart of gold. He's known for his business cunning and other things." Clara tried to hide her worries. "I'll be fine. I'm doing this because it's a great chance to help people and finish my nursing degree without drowning in debt." Still doubt lingered. She remembered Donovan's penetrating gaze during their meeting, the fleeting glimpses of something deeper in his otherwise guarded expression. Could there be a kinder man beneath that cold exterior, she wondered? Or was she simply reading too much into a professional arrangement? Meanwhile, behind the scenes at Roth Enterprises, Donovan found himself thinking more about Clara Ellis than he cared to admit. It wasn't just her mesmerizing voice or genuine compassion that intrigued him. It was the unflinching way she seemed to see through him. In his world of corporate sharks and gold-digging companions, sincerity was a rarity. On a late evening in his penthouse, Donovan flipped through the final outlines of the healthcare pilot program. He made notes in the margins, ensuring that all was set for the official launch. Typically, such tasks would be left to his staff, but he wanted to oversee every detail this time. Odd, considering he'd never bothered to micromanage philanthropic activities before. Victoria Hale noticed his distraction. She'd stopped by unannounced, wearing a slinky designer dress and expecting Donovan to be ready for an exclusive party downtown. Instead, she found him immersed in planning for a rural clinic mission. She rolled her eyes, pouting at the lack of attention. "Darling, can't this wait?" she cooed, slinking behind him and wrapping her arms around his shoulders. "You never used to care about these charity projects." "What's changed?" Donovan coolly extricated himself from her embrace. "A lot has changed, Victoria. I need to ensure this pilot is successful. If you want to go to your party, be my guest." Huffing in annoyance, Victoria gathered her things. "Fine, suit yourself," she snapped. "But don't blame me if you become the gossip of the night for bailing." He shrugged, unbothered. Being the subject of idle chatter was nothing new. As she stormed out, Donovan's thoughts drifted unbidden back to Clara. He recalled the look in her eyes the first night they met, equal parts fear and resolve. By the time the weekend arrived, Donovan and Clara embarked on the upstate trip, traveling in a black SUV, escorted by 2 additional vehicles, carrying supplies and staff. Gazing out the window at the rolling hills, Clara couldn't help feeling a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Donovan, seated beside her, remained quiet, occasionally addressing messages on his phone. After a few hours, the convoy arrived at the quaint town, a stark contrast to the glittering skyscrapers of Manhattan. The local clinic was housed in a modest building, paint peeling from the walls. Even from outside, Clara could sense the tired desperation of a place that needed help. This was where she belonged, on the front lines of healthcare, providing comfort to those who had none. Whether or not Donovan Roth was truly sincere, Clara would pour her heart into this mission. Little did she know that in the days to come, she would discover sides of Donovan that were as surprising as they were unsettling truths that would ultimately force them both to confront long-buried secrets and the volatile power dynamics that threatened to consume them. The little upstate clinic bustled with newfound energy. Under the medical pilot program, an influx of supplies and volunteer doctors transformed the once quiet hallways into hubs of activity. Clara threw herself into the work aiding physicians in administering vaccines, checking vitals and soothing anxious patients with her gentle manner. She saw firsthand how the local community had gone without adequate health care for too long. Elderly patients arrived with advanced ailments they had never been able to afford to treat in the city. Young mothers brought children who had missed basic immunizations. Each interaction fueled Clara's resolve to make a difference, reminding her why she had chosen nursing in the first place. Donovan spent most of his time supervising logistics. He coordinated with the Carter Foundation representatives, ensuring the media coverage aligned with the philanthropic narrative. But every so often, Clara spotted him lurking at the edges of the clinic hallways, watching her work. Initially, she assumed he was simply assessing whether the pilot program was worth his investment. Yet his gaze felt more personal, as if he were observing her rather than the clinic. One afternoon, while Clara was on a short break, Donovan approached her by the supply room. "Is everything running smoothly, Miss Ellis?" he asked, his tone more formal than she expected. She offered a small smile, dabbing her brow with a cloth. "We're making progress. There are more patients than I anticipated, but the team is handling it well. The supplies have been a blessing." He nodded. "Good. I want these people to have everything they need." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. She ventured a step further. "It's admirable, Mr. Roth, that you're funding this initiative. I know it must be expensive." His gaze flicked past her as if dismissing the cost. "Money isn't the issue. What matters is impact." Her eyes lingered on him, noticing a faint tension around his jawline. "I never expected you to care so much." Donovan's expression hardened. "Don't mistake a strategic decision for a personal crusade, Miss Ellis." Yet the conviction in his voice wavered slightly, betraying a hint of deeper feelings he seemed reluctant to acknowledge. "The Carter Foundation is an important partner. This pilot is good for business." With that, he strode away, leaving her with more questions than answers. Was he truly as cold and calculated as the rumors suggested? Or did some part of him genuinely care for the plight of these underserved communities? That evening, when the clinic staff finished their shift, the volunteers headed to a small lodge where they were staying. Set against a tranquil lake, it offered rustic charm and a chance to decompress after long hours of work. Clara managed to slip outside before dinner to savor the twilight reflection dancing on the water. Suddenly, footsteps crunched on the gravel behind her. She glanced over her shoulder to see Donovan approaching, hands in his coat pockets. The crisp night air carried the scent of pine. "You should be inside," he said, his voice low in the hush of the evening. "It's cold." Clara shrugged. "I needed some fresh air, and the lake is beautiful." He nodded in agreement, stepping closer to her side. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the last streaks of pink fade from the sky. Clara could feel his presence powerful but oddly contemplative. After a beat, Donovan spoke his words measured. "I find it surprising that you volunteer so willingly. Most people your age would be out clubbing or complaining about their workloads." She chuckled softly. "I suppose I'm not like most people." He turned to face her, then an unreadable look in his eyes. "No, you're not." The admission hung in the air, and for an instant Donovan's facade seemed to crack. Clara wondered if she glimpsed a man burdened by unimaginable pressures, or perhaps loneliness. A gust of wind rippled across the lake, and Donovan shifted, adopting his usual rigid posture. "We have another busy day tomorrow. You should get some rest." With that, he walked away, leaving Clara's heart pounding with questions. She stood there, under the darkening sky, recognizing for the first time that something intangible bound them, two people from different worlds, brought together by an initiative that was far more complicated than it seemed on the surface. And though neither could say it out loud, the possibility of an even deeper connection was growing with each encounter, unraveling the boundaries that had once kept them firmly apart. As the pilot program progressed, tensions began to emerge. While most of the community embraced the help, a few town elders expressed skepticism about Donovan's motives. Whispers circulated that Roth Enterprises might be scouting the area for lucrative development projects, a rumor that threatened to cast a shadow over the clinic's good deeds. Clara noticed the strain on Donovan. Normally composed and controlled, he grew more curt with staff. James Fletcher arrived from Manhattan to offer support, and the two men spent late nights holed up in makeshift offices, discussing finances and local politics. At times, Clara caught glimpses of them in heated conversation, though she never heard the specifics. One day, a local journalist named Priya Shenoy requested an interview with Clara and Donovan. She wanted to highlight the clinic's success, but also address community concerns. Clara was apprehensive. She wasn't used to media scrutiny, yet she agreed, hoping honest answers would quell the rumors. The interview took place in a quiet corner of the clinic. Cameras were set up, and Priya asked questions about the outreach's impact on patients. Clara spoke earnestly about the real differences the program was making, sharing stories of people who had finally received proper care. Then Priya turned to Donovan. "Mr. Roth," she began, "can you confirm or deny the rumors that Roth Enterprises is interested in buying land here for a real estate venture?" Donovan's eyes flickered. "Our sole purpose in this initiative is to improve healthcare accessibility. Any talk of real estate investments here is purely speculative. My company has broad interests, but none that conflict with this philanthropic effort." Priya pressed on. "You have a significant stake in property developments across New York State. Some locals believe your presence might be a prelude to pushing them off their land for commercial gain." Donovan's jaw tightened. "No such project exists." Clara felt the tension radiating from him. She jumped in, attempting to defuse the situation. "The pilot program is a collaboration with the Carter Foundation, focusing solely on medical aid. I've personally seen Mr. Roth dedicate resources to ensure the clinic's success." Priya nodded, momentarily placated. The interview ended on a hopeful note, but Donovan's composure had been visibly shaken. After the camera crew left, he strode out of the clinic, fists clenched at his sides. Worried Clara followed him outside. She found him standing by his SUV, glaring at a cluster of reporters, hoping to catch another soundbite. When he saw Clara, he motioned for her to step away from prying ears. His face was etched with frustration. "This is precisely why I hate dealing with small-town politics," he muttered. "People always think there's a catch, that I'm the villain swooping in to exploit them." Clara softened. I don't think you're a villain, Donovan. And you did well in the interview. Just keep focusing on the real good we're doing here. He studied her tension easing marginally. I appreciate your faith in me, Miss Ellis. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, and thank you for stepping in. You speak with a sincerity that I can't replicate. Before she could respond, a sleek sports car pulled up Victoria Hale in the driver's seat. She got out wearing designer sunglasses and a glamorous outfit that looked absurdly out of place in the rural setting. Donnie, she called, ignoring Clara entirely. I've been so bored in the city without you, I decided to pay you a surprise visit. Clara's chest constricted with an inexplicable pang, watching Victoria drape herself over Donovan's side. He forced a polite smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. Victoria, this is a bit unexpected, he said quietly. Victoria's gaze flitted to Clara, dismissing her in an instant. She turned her attention back to Donovan. You've spent enough time playing doctor up here, don't you think? Let's get back to civilization. The possessive edge in Victoria's voice needled Clara, who stepped away politely. Donovan offered no immediate defense, nor did he offer an explanation to Victoria about the importance of staying. In that moment, Clara saw the harsh reality. Donovan might be a complicated man, but to the outside world, and perhaps even to himself, he still belonged with people like Victoria Hale, existing in circles of wealth and indulgence. As they drove off together, Clara tried not to let it bother her. She reminded herself that Donovan's personal life was none of her concern. This was a job, a philanthropic mission, nothing more. But she couldn't silence the small sting in her chest. It felt like a warning sign that the walls between their two worlds, despite occasional cracks, still remained firmly in place. The pilot program hit its final week, and the clinic's improvements were undeniable. Patients received comprehensive checkups, and the community's trust in the initiative grew, though scattered rumors still lingered about Roth Enterprises' long-term plans. Tired but fulfilled, Clara spent her days on her feet, triaging patients and coordinating with the medical staff. Donovan, meanwhile, managed operations from a distance. His daily appearances at the clinic grew sporadic, likely due to dealing with external pressures, investors' media skepticism, and Victoria's demands. When he did show up, he was typically glued to his phone, issuing swift orders to employees at Roth Enterprises. Late one afternoon, Clara found herself restocking supplies in the break room when Donovan entered unexpectedly, phone in hand. He paused, noticing she was alone. For a moment, they stood in silence. The small space felt charged with unresolved tension. "Good job out there," he finally said, slipping the phone into his pocket. "The doctors say you've been indispensable." A faint blush rose in Clara's cheeks. "They're exaggerating. I'm just doing my part." She tried to avoid his gaze, focusing on the rows of medical gloves and syringes. Donovan stepped closer. "You're modest, Miss Ellis, but your presence here made a tangible difference. Even the staff sees it." He hesitated, then added, "So do I." She looked up, meeting his intense eyes. "Thank you. I appreciate that." Something about his tone invited honesty. Despite her better judgment, Clara decided to speak the question that had been gnawing at her for weeks. "Donovan, why do you really care? Everyone says this is just good PR for Roth Enterprises, but you seem personally invested." His expression darkened slightly, as though he wrestled with how much to reveal. "Because I know what it's like when no one steps in to help," he said finally, his voice subdued. "I grew up wealthy, yes, but money doesn't shield you from certain life cruelties. My mother was ill for years, and the best doctors in the world couldn't save her. It taught me that healthcare is often a luxury rather than a right. Clara's heart twisted at his confession. She saw a flicker of pain behind his steeled composure. "I'm sorry for your loss," she murmured. He exhaled as though releasing a burden. "After she passed, my father buried himself in building the Roth Empire, ignoring everything else. I suppose this pilot program is my attempt at balancing those scales in my own way." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "That's admirable. I truly believe you can make a difference." "And you are." For an instant they were lost in each other's eyes, an unspoken bond forming. Then, as if awakened from a dream, Donovan pulled away, retreating behind his usual stoic mask. "I need to check on some data with James. Excuse me." He left the room abruptly, leaving Clara stunned. In that brief moment of vulnerability, she saw a side of Donovan Roth that most would never believe existed, a man marked by loss, fueled by a sense of responsibility. He's human after all, Clara thought. The revelation both comforted and disconcerted her. By the end of the day, the clinic staff celebrated the pilot's near completion with a small gathering at the local town hall. Donovan made a brief appearance, offering formal thanks to everyone involved. Clara noticed him scanning the room, catching her eye, and for a moment they shared a silent understanding, born of that intimate conversation. But any hope of deeper connection was dashed when Victoria arrived again, interrupting him to complain about the dreary atmosphere. Clara watched Donovan's jaw tighten, but he didn't protest. As they left together, Clara couldn't ignore the pang in her chest. Perhaps all those glimpses of sincerity were fleeting, overshadowed by Donovan's world of privilege and demands. What she didn't know was that a storm was brewing, one that would culminate in public scrutiny, and a moment of truth neither she nor Donovan could escape. The lines between personal feelings and professional obligations were blurring, pushing them down a path that could either unite them or tear them apart in front of everyone. On the last day of the pilot program, the staff organized a farewell ceremony. Patients and town officials thanked Roth Enterprises and the volunteers for their assistance, while Donovan and James Fletcher took the stage to accept plaques of appreciation. The atmosphere was warm and celebratory, a stark contrast to the skepticism of just a few weeks earlier. Clara felt tears prick her eyes as an elderly woman thanked her personally, clutching her hand and saying, "You brought hope to this town." This, Clara realized, was what nursing meant to her, being a beacon of relief and compassion. She hoped she could carry that with her once she returned to the city. As people wrapped up the festivities, James Fletcher approached Clara with a friendly smile. "Miss Ellis, Mr. Roth would like to have a word with you before we head back." She nodded, heart quickening. A part of her feared this meeting would be a formal goodbye, an abrupt end to their strange, fleeting connection. Still, she followed James to a quiet corner outside the building where Donovan waited. His stance was as authoritative as ever, but Clara sensed something different, an almost hesitant edge to his demeanor. "The pilot program has been a success," he stated. "The Carter Foundation and the local government plan to continue it." Clara nodded. "I'm glad. The community deserves it." Donovan's gaze dropped to the ground momentarily before meeting hers again. "I wanted to personally invite you to a gala in Manhattan. It's a follow-up event for major donors celebrating the success of this outreach." His invitation made Clara blink in surprise. She recalled their initial meeting at a gala, an environment she'd found both intimidating and stifling. "A gala, I'm not exactly fond of that scene, Mr. Roth." A faint smile touched his lips, reminiscent of their first encounter when he'd complimented her singing. "Neither am I, but appearances matter. You played a vital role in making this pilot program work. I'd like you to share your experiences there to show donors the human side of what we've accomplished." Clara considered it. The thought of standing in a glitzy ballroom again made her stomach twist with nerves. Yet she recognized the importance of showcasing the clinic's success. "All right," she agreed, her voice soft. "If it helps the cause, I'll come." Relief flickered in Donovan's eyes. He reached into his pocket and handed her a sleek invitation. "It's next weekend at the Grand Regent Hotel. Formal attire required. I'll arrange for a car to pick you up if you like." She swallowed, half wishing the ground would swallow her up. "I have a dress I can borrow from Ivy," she mumbled. "Good," Donovan said simply. He hesitated, then added, "Thank you, Clara. This means a lot to me." The sound of her first name on his lips sent a shiver through her. She nodded, tucking the invitation into her bag, feeling a conflicting surge of excitement and dread. As she walked away, Clara couldn't help wondering if this event would be just another stuffy affair, or if it might force their connection out into the open, exposing it to the critical eyes of Donovan's world. On the ride back to Manhattan the next day, Clara stared out the window. Her thoughts filled with questions. Why invite me specifically? She pondered. Perhaps it was simply a PR move after all. She was the perfect face for the Foundation's grassroots success. But a small, stubborn part of her hoped it was because Donovan saw something more in her, just as she had started to see something more in him. Either way, there was no turning back now. The gala would be the ultimate test, not just of Clara's ability to handle the spotlight, but of Donovan's sincerity. Little did they know that it would also become the stage for a dramatic twist, one that would shake the foundation of Donovan's carefully crafted image and thrust Clara into a public storm she never asked for. The night of the gala arrived with a flurry of nerves. Clara stood in her apartment, tugging at the neckline of a simple yet elegant floor-length gown that Ivy had helped her pick out. Unlike the ostentatious designer frocks she'd seen on socialites, hers was understated, a flowing emerald green dress that complemented her gentle curves and brought out the warmth of her eyes. She pulled her hair into a loose chignon, allowing a few soft strands to frame her face. At precisely 7 o'clock, a black limousine glided to a stop outside her building. Feeling slightly out of place, Clara climbed inside, reminding herself that she was doing this for the clinic to demonstrate its success and to encourage more donations. Still, she couldn't deny the butterflies in her stomach at the thought of seeing Donovan again. The Grand Regent Hotel was ablaze with light and grandeur. As Clara stepped out of the limo, paparazzi snapped photos of arriving guests, celebrities, CEOs, and politicians. Heart-pounding, she accepted the help of a valet, navigating the red carpet leading into the ballroom. Once inside, she marveled at the dazzling space, gilded columns, crystal chandeliers, and tables adorned with extravagant centerpieces. Scanning the crowd, she spotted a familiar face, Donovan Roth, standing near the stage with James Fletcher and other influential figures. Dressed in a bespoke tuxedo, he exuded a confident aura, though a subtle tension braced his features. When he caught sight of Clara, his gaze lingered appreciatively, and he excused himself from the group to greet her. "You look—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Radiant." Clara's cheeks warmed. "Thank you. This place is incredible." Donovan nodded, gesturing toward a table. "We'll be seated up front. There'll be a short speech, then I'd like you to share a few words about our time upstate." She swallowed, nerves flaring anew. "I'll do my best." Before they could continue, Victoria Hale materialized at Donovan's side, flashing a plastic smile that didn't reach her eyes. She wore a shimmering designer gown that clung to her figure, practically screaming high fashion. Looping her arm through Donovan's, she regarded Clara with thinly veiled scorn. "I see you've arrived," Victoria said, the false sweetness in her tone barely masking her disdain. "How lovely." Clara mustered a polite smile, ignoring the jab. Donovan, sensing the tension, swiftly guided Clara away, making a point of seating her on his other side at the table. As the gala commenced, speeches extolled the partnership between Roth Enterprises and the Carter Foundation. Images of the upstate clinic played on large screens, and a wave of pride swept over Clara. When it was Clara's turn to speak, Donovan escorted her to the podium. Her heart pounded like a drum, but she steadied herself, recalling the faces of the patients she helped. She spoke simply about the transformative experience, praising the local staff, the volunteers, and yes, even Donovan's funding. Her sincerity shone through, earning applause and a standing ovation from some corners of the room. As she stepped down from the stage, Donovan's eyes glowed with appreciation. "Well done," he murmured, leaning in close enough that she could catch the faintest whiff of his cologne. A wave of warmth washed over her, fueling a strange hope that perhaps, just perhaps, there was a genuine connection beyond the facade. But no sooner had they taken their seats than the evening took a dark turn. A sudden commotion erupted by the ballroom's entrance. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as a man in rumpled attire stormed inside, brandishing a stack of papers. He marched straight toward some tour of the stage, ignoring security's attempts to stop him. "Donovan Roth is a fraud," the man's shouted voice reverberating across the hall. Gasps and murmurs filled the air. Cameras from the press swiveled in his direction. "He's planning to develop luxury condos in the same town he's helping. Just wait and see." The man waved the documents madly, claiming they were contracts. Blood drained from Clara's face. She glanced at Donovan, who appeared visibly stunned, though he quickly masked it. Victoria seized the opportunity to latch onto him. Journalists scrambled, and in a flash they were thrust into a pandemonium of questions, cameras, and accusations. Clara stood rooted to the spot, her stomach twisting. Had it all been a lie? She thought about how Donovan had insisted his involvement was purely benevolent. Now a man was publicly accusing him of the very deception the town had feared. Could Donovan truly have orchestrated this entire clinic outreach just to pave the way for a real estate deal? In the swirl of confusion, Donovan turned to Clara. Their eyes locked, and she saw conflict raging behind his usually impassive gaze. He reached out, but she stepped back, heart pounding. All around them, voices clamored, demanding answers. In that charged moment, Clara realized that if she was going to believe in Donovan, she needed more than carefully chosen words. She needed the unvarnished truth. A storm of reporters descended, flashing cameras in Donovan's face and firing rapid questions. Security rushed in to contain the situation, but the chaos only grew. The man with the documents, identified as a disgruntled former Roth employee, continued shouting accusations. He bought off officials to secure permits. He's just using the clinic to soften the public's view. Clara, caught in the center of the maelstrom, watched Donovan's expression harden. There was no immediate denial or explanation, just his typical stone-faced defiance. A nauseating wave of betrayal washed over her. All this time she had defended him, believing he was different from the ruthless persona the world painted him to be. Victoria seized Donovan's arm, hissing under her breath. "We need to leave now. There's no point entertaining this nonsense." He pulled away, glancing at Clara with something akin to desperation. This is a misunderstanding. I promise." Clara's voice trembled, but she managed to speak loud enough for him and everyone else to hear. "Is it because it looks exactly like the scenario people warned me about? I asked you if there was more to this pilot program. You swore there wasn't." Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, the sting of heartbreak cutting deeper than she'd ever expected. What am I supposed to believe? The press noticed the dramatic confrontation unfolding between the billionaire and the unassuming woman. Microphones and cameras swung toward them, capturing every anguished flicker across Clara's face. Donovan drew a shaky breath, scanning the sea of onlookers. He reached out, attempting to take Clara's hand, as if that small gesture could reaffirm some semblance of honesty. "Clara, there's more to the story. None of it is what this man claims." His voice was low, urgent, but Clara stepped back, refusing his hand. The heartbreak that once simmered beneath the surface now flared into righteous indignation. "No, Donovan," she said, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "I trusted you because I believed in your sincerity. If there's any truth to what he said, then you played all of us, the clinic staff, the town me." Her refusal was a slap in the face as potent as any physical blow. The crowd watched, transfixed. Victoria's eyes flashed triumph, seeing Donovan publicly spurned by a woman she deemed insignificant. But Donovan himself appeared more shaken than anyone had ever seen him, struggling to piece together the right response. Clara's gaze flicked to the cameras, then back to Donovan. "I'm done," she said firmly. "I can't stand by someone who might be using people's suffering for profit. If that's who you are, then I want no part of it." With those words, Clara turned on her heel, stepping away from the dais. Reporters pressed closer, shouting questions at her. She ignored them, forging a path through the crowd until she reached the ballroom's exit. Each step felt simultaneously liberating and agonizing, tears threatening to break free the moment she was out of sight. In the stunned silence left behind, Donovan stood before the crowd, his carefully curated image crumbling. He was the powerful billionaire who ruled boardrooms, the one no one dared to challenge, now publicly rejected by a simple woman who had once believed in him. Cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing the look of raw defeat on his face, as Clara disappeared from view. The final blow to Donovan's towering pride was delivered in front of everyone. The man who thought he could control every outcome realized too late that some things like trust, love, and genuine human connection could never be bought. In that singular, devastating moment, the unthinkable happened. Donovan Roth, the ruthless billionaire, had been brought to his knees by the very thing he'd neglected all his life. The truth. Despite all the broken promises and shattered illusions, Clara's public stand became a symbol of resilience. She stood for truth in a world where money often drowned out morality. Though deeply hurt, she returned to her nursing studies with renewed determination, fueled by the belief that real change doesn't require billions, it requires heart. Donovan left to face a whirlwind of media scrutiny and possibly legal ramifications, was forced to reckon with the consequences of his choices. What happens next? Does Donovan redeem himself, proving his sincerity? Or does he sink under the weight of his deception? And will Clara ever open her heart to him again? Or has their final moment together truly spelled the end? If you've been captivated by this tale of love, betrayal, and redemption, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for more thrilling stories that remind us how integrity and hope can rise above even the greatest odds. Your support keeps these real-life drama fiction stories coming. So join us in spreading the power of truth and compassion.